Hello, good morning, guys. I think it's about 9:30, so we probably should start. Oh no, we're okay. It's 9:24. We got a minute. Thanks for not sitting in lines, because the idea of this is to be an open discussion, and it's really weird to be mic'd up because they're recording. So we originally had the theater for this session, and I thought, oh man, that's going to be the worst because that's not good for open discussions. So everybody welcome. Hi, I'm Matt. There are some chairs over here, so come on in, guys. Come on in. So the idea of the session is to hopefully convey what it's like to be a junior dev in Minnesota. And there are a lot of people here. I was assuming that there were going to be about 20 or so, and that we could just go around the room and sort of share our experiences. But I guess there's a lot of interest. With that in mind, I have a deck, but there are only 8 slides, so don't worry too much. If you want to go to the next one, that'd be great. So the overview of what we're talking about is an open discussion to provide a realistic picture of what it's like to be a junior developer in Minnesota. Personally, I don't want to talk too much about myself, or I don't want to be talking too much. I'd rather have everybody else be sharing their personal experiences. But I am a software engineer at Granicus right now, which is formerly GovDelivery. My career prior to that was not software, and so my background was data analysis. And so having been a self-taught software engineer, I've talked to other folks who are aspiring software engineers. They've gone through boot camps, or they're currently engineers themselves. And there's a lot of challenges that sort of you face along the process. And so the idea is, let's sort of form a community and help each other out. Come on in, guys. Welcome, welcome. There are some more seats over here. If you got a seat next to you guys, raise your hand real fast. There's a seat over here. Anybody want front center? And a little housekeeping thing. The 2 feet rule of minibar. If this is your first minibar, if this session isn't for you, feel free to walk out. Nobody's gonna be offended. You're gonna have a better time if you go to a different session. That's just like how minibar works. So don't be like hesitant to leave because you're sitting in the corner and this is like the worst session for you. Nobody's gonna be offended. So with that, let's get started. Do you wanna go to the next slide, please? So just a little bit of background. Junior dev I define as based on experience, not age or title or anything else. It's really just an easy way to communicate people who don't have a whole lot of experience in software engineering. So I hope that definition works for you guys. I hope it doesn't offend anybody. You can go to the next one. Because this is so large, I think I'd really like to have people start using hashtag to keep track of the conversation so that we can refer back to it selfishly, so I can refer back to it in the future. I was thinking about the idea of starting an event, a monthly event for junior developers to get together, and I was trying to schedule something, and it was right around the end of March, and then I realized Minibar was happening, and so I thought, oh man, we can just have the first session be at Minibar. So if you guys are interested, for one, if this is a useful conversation for you, if you're interested in continuing to go to events that are similar formats to this, and or if you want to help me organize in the future, stick around and find me afterwards, and or just tweet to the hashtag or email me or whatever. I'm easy to find. Next slide. Okay, one more thing, shout out. There are a bunch of other sessions that sort of fall in line with this same idea, the same topic of what it's like to be a junior developer. How do you teach yourself? How do you learn? How do you get mentored? Why don't you hire junior developers? And so there are 3 other sessions that I listed up here. One's at 2, one's at 3, one's at 4. Janessa, you want to raise your hand real fast? This is Janessa, everybody. Janessa's topic is, so you don't hire junior devs, tell me more. And then at 3 p.m., Paul Cantrell is talking about what's the right way to learn and teach programming. And then at 4, oh, Paul, you want to stand up? Everybody, that's Paul. Hi. And then at 4 p.m., Elizabeth Wenner, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. I don't know if she's here. Elizabeth, not here today? Elizabeth is talking about mentoring junior developers, how to do it and why you should. And so that's at 4. So just a little quick heads up in terms of what other stuff is happening today. And also why we might not dive too deep into any of these topics because there are other sessions devoted specifically to them. Next slide. Okay, For any of you guys who just walked in, if you want to grab a seat, I think there are like a handful of spots over here. If you want to come sit down, you're going to get really uncomfortable if you're squatting the whole time. You're good? Okay. Nice mobility. All right. Okay, so this is where the open discussion starts. So by a show of hands, really fast, how many folks here identify as a junior dev in terms of like you're aspiring, you got a gleam in your eye, you've taken an online programming course, you're in prime or you graduated the Iron Yard recently, or you're working as a software engineer, or you're super experienced and you just want to sort of help out and see what's going on, or like that sort of thing. So how many guys, by show of your hands again, really fast, raise your hands. Wow, there are a lot of us. Okay, that's great. So I'm going to ask that as we go through sort of discussion topics, if you want to sort of share your input, shoot your hand up so that I can call on you and hand you the mic. The reason we need the mic is because they're recording. So without further ado, let's start the open discussion. Can we go to the next slide? Great. All right, we're just going to leave it here for a while. So the first things first, what were your motivations to get into software? Like what were your aspirations? What was it that made you take that computer science course or that online programming course? Show of hands, anybody who wants to talk about this first? I can start because it's first thing in the morning. For me, I was an analyst for about 7 or 8 years before I actually got into software, and I had bumped up against the limitations of Excel enough times that I was like, there's gotta be a better way. And so eventually, like after a couple false starts, in terms of like trying to take an online course, asking around for people to share sort of how they thought I should start, and literally everybody had a different opinion, that eventually the approach I took stuck. And so I started learning Ruby and Rails and object-oriented programming, and here I am a year and a little bit later, and I'm working as a software engineer. So for me, my motivation was partly that the work I was doing felt repetitive and that there were better ways to do things. And the other part was sort of just how my brain worked. And I found that as an analyst, I tended to build platforms and tools that other people would use to do analysis rather than wanting to do the analysis myself. And the other part of that is just that my whole family is engineers and scientists. And so I kind of thought to myself, I've got the mind for engineering. I probably just need to go spend the time to learn it to do it. All right, so I went first. I need somebody else to go. Motivations. Josh, here, I'm gonna give you the mic. It's for the recording. So when you start speaking, if you haven't spoken already, please, brief introduction, just introduce yourself really fast, your name, what do you do, and then go for it.
Yeah, Josh Royce, senior architect at New Lion. Video games, man, of course. Who doesn't want to make video games when they get older? So, got out of high school, wanted to make video games, so I went into learning how to do that.
That's a great motivation. All right, who else? What do we got? Can you stand up?
Hi, my name is Mike Davidovich. I work for Excel Energy and program management for energy efficiency programs. My first degree is in theater. Yes. Which is why I can stand here with a microphone. No. I work with a lot of engineers, and they're really, really awesome people. And as a program manager, I found myself spinning plates, lots and lots of plates, and not actually ending the day saying, I made this, I did this. So actually, I went back to school to start an electrical engineering program, because I thought that was kind of cool. That may be a little beyond me. And I realized in part of that curriculum, there was a object-oriented class, and that's what I was really looking forward to. I wanted to play with that. And so I switched to a computer science program, and I'm just having a ball with it. And I can't wait to be a developer one day so I can end my day saying, I made this, instead of saying what plates are spinning and what ones are breaking. Yeah, thanks.
That's awesome. All right, who else we got? Oh, sorry.
My name's Margaret Elkins. I'm a developer at Doherty Business Solutions, software engineer. I've been doing it for 6 months. I studied comp sci undergrad. I have a computer science degree. I am pre-object-oriented programming. So it's old stuff, right? And one day, my dear husband said to me, what do you really want to do? And I'll tell you what I did before in a second. I said, well, what I'd really like to do is go back to coding. It's so much fun. And a lot of people said, well, everything you know is really old, and it's the mind. If your mind works that way, when you're 14, when you're 18, when you're 23, when you're 33, that's what your mind is. So you might as well make it happy. And I have like high grade education from the early years, and I went to MCTC, a community college, and had 2 fantastic teachers. I asked everybody around, what languages should I study? C# and Java came up, and so I checked out Java and then web full stack, and it is so much fun. And I used to be a television producer, and everyone thinks that's so great, and this is way better.
That's so great. Thank you. Motivations, anybody else? I feel like there are a lot of other reasons for getting into software that haven't been addressed yet.
Adia Alderson. I'm a software developer at the Minnesota Senate. So I took a computer science course in high school, and afterwards my teacher told me to choose something else when I finished. So I still wanted to be in tech, so I went to MCTC. I did graphic design, and we were forced to take a web class, and so I had to mess with jQuery, and they ended up teaching most of the students how to use it after I was done. And the teacher there, which was really great teacher, said, why aren't you in web development or software development? I was like, oh, well, I didn't do so well in high school and stuff like that. He's like, no, you should go. And so then Prime Digital Academy, and so I went to boot camp. I did really well there, and now I do software development. And one of the motivations why I really like it is because it feels like magic to me. And so it's an instant feedback loop. So I do something, refresh the page, and bam, I can see the effects of what I'm doing. I mean, I remember I first started when I was little, Neopets. I would make really cool HTML pages with all my friends. And so after that, I kind of like kept with it.
That's great. Thank you. All right, who else we got? Garrett?
Hi, I'm Garrett. I actually work with Matt. I'm not a plant, I swear. I'm not actually currently a dev, but I'm working very hard to get there. I work as an operations manager for like our project management team. But I went to school for like music and art and audio engineering, and I like the idea of always creating something. And then, I've young kids. I was a dad pretty early, so I was like, okay, find a job. And I just eventually started to really miss the idea of creating something that somebody else could experience, and that's what I had with like music. I got really into like cooking, and I was like, well, how can I make this a career to obviously support my family? And that's where the idea of like, well, software engineering seemed very technical, but my experience so far is it's actually a very creative experience of building something and then having somebody else actually experience it, and that's where the hook really got me, and I've been kind of head first into it now for a good year learning, and hopefully we'll get there sometime soon, so, but yeah.
Hi, I'm Jason. Pardon me. I'm also developing at Granicus with these guys. I got into it from a support perspective because when you're working tech support, you run into those things that happen over and over and over again, and you don't know why, and you just want to get behind it and fix it, and you kind of feel like you have a better idea of why it's broken than the devs do, and it's turning out you're probably right. So if you've been feeling that, you should follow up on it because you're probably right.
Great, thank you. Any other for motivation? We'll move on here in just a minute if we got, okay, 3 more.
Hi, I'm Ilse Dipnar, she, hers, from McAllister College. So I'm a CS major at the moment, but I started coding summer of like between sophomore and junior years of high school, and my friends were doing Ludum Dare, if anyone has done that before. So, and male socialization is like really real, and so I felt like, whoa, okay, I need to get up on this entire coding thing. So I read through all of the Java documentation and kind of made a really terrible Android app that summer. And I mean, right now, still they're talking about tries and concurrent programming. And it's interesting to listen to them, but it was sort of a social thing for me. We were the group of kids who sat at math competitions and programmed calculators, that type of nerdy, so.
Great, thank you. All right, who else we got? We got 2 more? All right.
Hi, I'm Amanda. I got my bachelor's in journalism, and for the past 6 years, I did a lot of digital marketing. And I think I first got interested in coding when I had a Zanga and a LiveJournal, and I wanted to customize the themes, and so I would go into the HTML and CSS and change it, and I didn't realize what I was doing at the time was coding. And so then you fast forward like 15 years later, and I'm working in content management systems, and things would break, and I'd get upset, and I'm like, why can't I just fix this myself? And so I started teaching myself, and then I went through a boot camp, and now in a few weeks I'm starting my first job, so as a software developer. So I'm really excited.
Excellent, congratulations. Sam, all right, we're moving on to transitioning your career next, so start thinking about what you guys did to transition your career.
So I've actually told this story many, many times. I used to be a baker and a cake decorator, and I absolutely loved it. You could be creative, you could eat a lot of frosting, and and the company that I worked for at the time, I started when I was 19. I just really needed a job, and it was fun, but we didn't click anymore. And someone told me, well, you seem creative. You should try coding. I was like, coding what? And so I went online and I did Team Treehouse, I believe it was, and just kind of messed around to see if I liked it, and I fell in love. Oh my goodness. I couldn't stop. I was up all night. My husband was like, I think you have a problem. And so I came up with this analogy, because people are like, well, cake decorating, it's very different from coding. And when I thought about it, when it comes to front end, HTML is like the base, it's the cake. And the frosting, that's like the CSS. You can design it, you can pick whatever colors you want, you can position it wherever you want, whatever shapes. And then the JavaScript is like that twirly little plate that you put it on that makes the cake look appetizing. And so I switched to coding. I'm freelancing right now, but it's so wonderful because I'm able to still be creative and use that part of my mind, and I lost a lot of weight.
All right, transitioning your career. So some people, I feel like, and I don't know how many people in the room this applies to, some people went to school for computer science and then started programming right afterwards. If you're like me, you didn't do that. And so just quickly, by a show of hands, how many of you folks transitioned your career or want to transition your career into coding? Okay, gosh, there's a lot of us. All right, who wants to share what it was like to transition their career and some of the sort of pitfalls and approaches that worked? Morning, guys.
Come on in.
Seat over there, over there. What do you think, guys?
So my name's Scott Duncan. I worked for 10 years as a CNC machine operator / programmer. I hated the job. I worked with family. That didn't make it any better. The head of the business, my beloved father, was a terrible businessman, but it turned out to be the best blessing because we lost the business. I was forced to transition my career. And I just looked back on a choose-your-own-adventure game that I built in BASIC in like first year of junior high, and said, I gotta go to school for that. And so I did. I got a 2-year associate's, just graduated in December. The pitfalls for me were learning how to learn again, honestly. The process of machining is just so, do the same thing over and over again that it was difficult just to spark that creative part of my brain again.
Thanks, Scott. In my experience, what I did was I decided that I wanted to get into programming, and then what I did was I ran the idea by the leadership at the startup I was working at, and I said, hey guys, I want to do this, and they're like, go for it. And so for me, like in terms of transitioning my career, what that meant was essentially clearing my schedule outside of work and focusing exclusively on learning Ruby and learning Rails and learning object-oriented programming, so that the time I spent outside of work, I'd be able to slowly start doing more coding at work. And so that was sort of the approach I took. But yeah, I want to hear more about your guys' different experiences transitioning.
I am Sophia. Before transitioning, I was in medicine and worked at a hospital for a couple of years, and that was horrible. You see wonderful people and see a whole lot of things, but I got tired of being peed on and pooped on and puked on and bled on, and everything you can imagine would happen to you in that hospital. So I started thinking about what other ways I wanted to get out, and I started looking at other things in the hospital I wanted to do if I wanted to, move up through there, and there was absolutely nothing in there I wanted to do. So I started thinking about things I could do on my own, like businesses or websites and stuff, and started coming up with all these cool business ideas, but I had no idea how to do any of them. So I decided that I should probably learn how to actually make the things that I would need to have that business. So then I started going to Girl Develop It meetups a lot, which are really cool. They teach you from the ground up, and they're really nice the way that they bring you into it, and it was so much fun. I had a really good time, but I agree that a really hard part is turning on the creativity part of your brain if you haven't used it for a couple of years. Where the creativity that I would encounter was, how do I get this person to stop slapping me, as opposed to they have dementia and stuff. It's not on purpose, but as opposed to how do I create this piece of art instead? That's the hardest part.
What was your name again? Sophia. All right. Thank you, Sophia. All right. If you guys don't want to talk about transitioning your career, let's talk about learning approaches, because I know boot camps are a very hot topic, and a lot of folks have gone through boot camps here, and so I think that that's something that we definitely want to talk about. As far as learning approaches go, well, hold on really fast. Does anybody else specifically want to talk about transitioning your career before we move into learning approaches? Okay, great. Last one.
Hi, everybody. My name is Susie. I'm currently a programmer analyst at CX Robinson. My transition into technology hasn't always been easy. I actually have a bachelor's degree in psychology and graduated at the U of M. And I worked as an administrative assistant for a very long time. And then over time, I gained experience, and I felt like I was like a Microsoft Office pro. So, and I was a power user, and I was like, yeah, I want to learn more. So then, I just felt like I hit a ceiling, and I'm like, well, what am I doing? And as part-time, I also worked in the hospitality restaurant industry. So I had a really weird experience, and then one of my friends who lives in San Fran was like, hey, you should consider coding. Everyone's doing it out here. Why don't you try it? I'm like, yeah, whatever. And he's like, yeah, there's people that work in the service industry, they're coding, and they're going to boot camps, and then they come out and make lots of money. I'm like, okay, whatever. And a year later or so, I stayed up all night. One night, I Googled free IT-related programs. I got into one that actually provided my A+ certification, which is mostly hardware, software, and then the desire to learn more about code was still there. So I got involved into a programming boot camp, and then I just marketed myself. I reached out to people in the community with women in tech, girls develop it, women who code, and it's just a great way to learn what they're doing and connect with people that are in the industry. But that was pretty much my road.
That's great, thank you. All right, so learning approaches. I know for me personally, once I decided that I wanted to become a software engineer, I was like, okay, where do I start? And I feel like that's a big question in terms of what learning approach you take, and also even what language you start with. And so I love to hear people's opinions and input and experiences about how they decided to pursue whatever they did to start learning. Who wants to go first? All right, Sam.
So I hope this is on topic. This has been the biggest frustration of mine learning how to code. I started about a year and a half ago, and I'm self-taught, and I went to, I'm sorry if some of you are here, a JavaScript meetup, and I was like, yeah, I'm new, I'm learning how to code, I'm so excited, and I talked to so many different people there, and I'm like, what should I be learning? This is where I want to end up, where should I go? And every single person, I talked to about 25 people, and every single person told me something different. I learned the name of 25 different languages at a JavaScript meetup. Luckily, it took me about a year before I really honed in and focused in on what I want to be learning, but that was a huge, huge issue with me.
I would echo that experience too, that when I first started out, I asked around for what programming language should I start with, and literally everybody had a different opinion. So I would say, I don't know, in my experience, I would say try one or two, and if it feels good, keep going. If it doesn't feel good, try something else. And it's like, I feel like my inclination at least was if I took a CS 50 course online that was in C, and I started on that path, and about halfway in, I was like, this is stupid. Why would I ever use this? Like, I want to make an application. I don't want to do memory management. And so after that, I tried something else. But so here we go.
By the way, language wars never end.
He said language wars never end. Perfect. Thank you.
Hey, Margaret again. I think it helps to know what you want to do. And I'm a super practical person. I've worked in a lot of creative fields, television. I used to be a dancer. I play some music. I've been exposed to arts and creativity all my life, and I think that's a big part of it, but I'm also really practical. And I was like, I want a job that's going to pay well, that's going to be longer lasting. I don't want to be picked up and dropped all the time. And I want to create business solutions. So I knew that I wanted to create business solutions, and that's how C# and Java came to me. And those were the two things when I said I want to work for a development organization. I don't want to be involved with an organization that adapts other people's programs to their specific needs, and it's really just data sculpting or something like that. I actually want to be coding. So I think really knowing what you want to do and articulating that to someone might help them direct you in the right way. But I will say that when I got into school at MCTC, my Java teacher, who I loved, Claire James, rocks, she was teaching a full stack web class, like the the first web class MCTC ever taught. And I kind of got hooked on that there, because that's kind of what's going on now, and everything's delivered that way in some sense. So anyway, I think it helps to express what you want to people, and they can maybe help direct you to that.
All right, here we go.
Hi, my name is Thompson. I work at BlueStem as a intern programmer. I'm going back to school. Actually, I started school a couple of years ago, but didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. So that's the best part about going to school, is I learned like a lot of different programming languages. And through my time at school, I had a lot of different jobs, and I just always found that these different architectures are like stuff that I interacted with, like McDonald's, like touchscreen monitors. They're just horrible to use, and I always wanted to find a way to make them more interactive, better operationally wise. So, I mean, that's basically where I came up with what I want to do.
Well, thanks, Conrad. Okay, hey, let's talk about boot camps. Oh, okay, hold on, sorry. We'll talk about boot camps after this. All right, perfect. Jim, hello, Jim.
Wait, am I talking about boot camps or about? Oh shoot, I wasn't prepared to talk about boot camps. Okay, well, first thing I'll talk about the last topic we were talking about. My name's Jim Cummins. I'm a developer. I'm going to be joining Object Partners here in the Twin Cities. I formerly worked at the Iron Yard as an instructor, And I learned how to code because I'm really bad at remembering formulas in math class. So I could never remember like really basic stuff like Pythagorean theorem or anything. So I wrote an app on my calculator, and then someone else showed me that they had like Mario Brothers or something on their calculator, and I was like, what? Mind blown. All right, this is what I'm gonna be doing. But then I saw you could use a computer for this. I brought a computer home on the school bus. It took me 2 days because it was so big. And I got it out of the dumpster at school and then ran Ethernet down my house's hallway. My mom almost killed me because she would almost trip over this wire and fall down the stairs. So she's alive. And then, so I guess what I would say is, like, from someone who's self-taught, the couple pieces that I would say is always read the manual, right? And also try to read more code than you write. Like, that's been really helpful for me, because I think people say that about writing. Just, writing too is you need to read more than you write if you want to write really good code. So I try to read a lot of code. And then the other thing is basically if you know how to write like a really good Google search, like you're already part of the way there, because that means you have at least thought through the problem enough that you're on the right track. So when I started, there was no Google. So thank you, Google. Boot camps. I don't know. I don't know what to say about boot camps. I was an instructor at boot camp, and one of the things I love about boot camps is how fast they move. So when I was going to school, or when I tried to go to school, things moved so slowly that it wasn't for me. Like, I just stopped and started working instead, because it was just better for me. I didn't feel like it was getting in the way of me. So I don't know if other boot camp grads want to talk about that experience and the pace. But one of the interesting things I think we need to talk about, or I would love to hear more about, is how boot camp grads feel like once they're out of boot camp, that we can like basically give them a longer tail to get them in the community, because I think there's a lot of work to be done there, like after boot camp. So yeah, interested in hearing more.
Thanks, Jim. All right. Rachel? Sorry, I can't see the people behind me. You guys, okay? Okay, great. Thanks, guys.
All right, well, I can talk about learning approaches and boot camps, because I'm currently in one. Hi, I'm Rachel, and I am doing the Flatiron Boot Camp. It's an online boot camp, and my path to this was like, I'm going to do a project. I'm going to make a really cool styled map for my wedding website. I'm going to build a loading icon for the company that I work for in SVG, and I'm going to build a CSS style sheet for a blog network that I'm a part of. All of these things that I did a lot of work and kind of hacked things together, and eventually realized, like, I know how to do these things, but I don't know why I'm doing a lot of the things that I'm doing. Like, I don't know about the flow of an HTML web page. I don't know what float actually does, and at a certain point, I know it's terrifying. I built too many websites without knowing what float actually did. I knew what it did, but I didn't know why it did it, and I know it's crazy. So eventually, I said, like, I really want to do this as my career, and I enrolled in a boot camp, partially because I wanted to get those foundational reasons behind things, because I think as someone who's learning to program, you can set out for a goal and accomplish that goal. So you can set out to accomplish a goal, and you can accomplish that goal, and you can not really have learned the things that let you accomplish that goal. So that's, I'm really glad that I'm doing my boot camp, and I think Team Treehouse can, anything that's actually curriculum that's teaching you things explicitly can get you those foundational knowledge pieces, so that the next time you approach a similar problem, you can actually solve it with the knowledge that you have, as opposed to trying to figure your way around the problem. So I'm in favor of it. It's low battery.
Okay. Well, I think you guys first. We'll go ahead. Stand up, speak loud.
Hi, my name is Matthias, and I and a couple other people in this room just graduated Prime yesterday. I can tell you that the only coding experience I had before that things that I really appreciated about Prime was the support group that you have around you, and the highly structured environment that you're in. If I would have tried to teach myself, I would probably have spent half the day on Facebook. So it was much better of an environment. I made some like lifelong friends in this environment, and I think that that's something that's not always necessarily touched on when we talk about these sorts of places. Super accelerated pace. I think we learned a lot, definitely got our money's worth, and there is still a lot left to learn, but that's kind of what we all learned, is that we have this love of learning, and that it's an environment that you're constantly learning in this field. So that's something that we were all really drawn to.
Great, thanks, Sophias. So the camaraderie and the structure, things that you really like. Great. And the next, you want to stand up and speak loud?
Yeah, I can do that. I went to Cummins Academy as boot camp. I was one of the earlier cohorts. So back, a lot has changed since I looked on the website. Back then, they just did full stack engineering, so you learned both the front end and the back end, the lean stack. And in the earlier days, they had a lot of growing pains. So going through, I really gravitated more to back end development, and I really liked that. But the problem was, it felt like when you were finished with it, you were very prepared for entry-level front-end position, but not so much in back-end development, which is what I really wanted to get into. I thought I knew what I was doing, with my one application in Node, but it feels like there's a huge depth for more to learn in back-end that you can't really get in the boot camp. I don't know, I can't remember a couple months that you are in there. And so I think that I feel doing full stack in that short amount of time might not be the best. I feel like if it was split apart and they had a track for front end and then back end, I would prefer to do the back end track and then focus on that. Luckily, when I got my job at the Senate, they had no concept of that, and there's only me and one other developer, so it's like, do everything. So I got thrown into the water, but now I do back end development, which is super cool. But once I was there, I realized if I had gotten a job as backend, I was not prepared. I was on Pluralsight almost every night when I first started, just learning about Linux and learning about different types of traffic and networking and all the stuff that goes into this. You just can't teach in such a short amount of time. I think that's the only downside of how boot camps are, but I see lately that they have started doing track with Prime, which I think is a better approach.
Thank you. Jim?
I can wait if you want to move on.
Let's see. We talked a little about learning coaches. I think for teaching yourself, it's kind of just you are your own. You have to be accountable to yourself to get things done. So it's hard. And I think that there are probably a lot of topics that we're not going to be able to cover today. And so one of the hopes that will come out of today's session was that we'll turn this into a monthly event. So if you're interested in a monthly event, please find me afterwards and we can coordinate and make this happen. So in terms of the other things that we want to talk about here, languages, I think we already touched on that a tiny bit. Everybody has an opinion, and what's right for you may not be what's right for somebody else. Learning topics kind of goes along with that, like where do you start? I'm just going to read off the discussion topics so that we can just sort of talk about the things that are most pressing in your guys' minds for the class with the last 12 minutes we have in the session. Getting experience, getting your first job, you got a job, now what? Challenges, culture, what Minnesota is like relative to other places, and also confidence. Who wants to talk about any of those things? Yeah, thank you.
All right, so I'll give my story a little bit. My name is Thompson. I've been working on the web for about 10 years, and I started working on the web when I was 15. That's when I got my first job, and that was really difficult for me because I often confronted a lot of ageism. I was fired at least once for how young I was, and I wasn't given a raise for how young I was in the second occasion. And it was very difficult because a lot of the times I would kind of hide from telling people how young I was at the time. And getting experience was difficult for me. But I think what has been beneficial is I think we've grown as an industry in that sense. I don't think there's as much of that anymore. I would like to say that I look around at some companies and they seem to be very open to hiring people who are young or young in experience. You know what I mean? Like not actually like a teenager, but like just young in experience. Do I hold it like, oh, okay. So that has been really encouraging to see. And I think, getting your first job, that can be really difficult. It can be very nerve-wracking. But I think the key to it, and it kind of worked with me, was that I tried to be as honest as I could with potential employers about the experience that I had. And maybe your particular circumstance, you have experience being at a boot camp, or maybe you're teaching yourself. Tell that to the person that you are trying to interview with, because I think telling someone that you're teaching yourself is definitely a good thing, because I think that's what all employers want to find. So,
Thanks, Tim. All right. Hello.
Hello, I'm Sarah Bueller. I'm actually going to talk not about my experience with getting a job in the tech industry, but my husband's. He works for Object Partners. He's a self-taught software developer. And at the beginning, it was kind of hard for him to get returns on his resumes because he didn't have a degree or anything. But he found that the best way to really get into places that you want to work for is building interpersonal connections and showing what you've done. If you can demonstrate your ability, people are a lot more likely to consider you instead of just looking at a resume. And one of his earlier jobs he applied for, and it said you can email or call. And so he called, and they said, "You're probably the first person to call our company about a job in 5 years." And it really helped him get the job. So building those relationships and showing your work can really help you.
That's great, and I know that's definitely something that I leveraged. Like, I leaned hard on people I knew and people who I knew who worked at companies that were hiring when I was applying, and talking to them before I even applied or talked to a recruiter or anything. And then it's just like, once you have that in, you're like, that's like the, I don't know, like it's like the VIP entrance or something. It's like, oh yeah, we'll just connect you to these people, and then you don't have to go through the normal hiring process. All right, Jason.
Sorry, this one's tiny, but with regard to the social networking piece of it, like, it's who you know, not what you know. That can be faked, so consider that. That's all. Like my first tech job, a friend of mine who we met at like a prior support role, he said that he knew somebody at the company, and so I went in for an interview and I name dropped that person. And I didn't have to go meet them, so we never had to go over the fact that I never knew them. And that was enough. Like that, I've taken, four job changes across 2 companies off of that bullshit start.
All right, so what he's saying is, so what he's saying is fake that you know somebody at the company to get a job. Thanks, Jason.
And if that company's paying a referral bonus, they're not going to out you.
All right, so we have only a few more minutes left. It's 10:09, the session ends at 10:15, and one of the things we have to do before we leave this room is put everything back in rows of chairs again. So we have 6 minutes, so you don't have to pack up right now, but get ready. One person who hasn't raised their hand yet who I want to speak is Janessa, so I'm gonna put her on the spot. This is Janessa, everybody.
Thank you, man. Okay, so my name is Janessa. I am I started as self-teaching myself, and then I went to the Iron Yard and was taught by this lovely man right here who changed my life. So I studied kinesiology at the U of M, which if you don't know is basically exercise science. So not techie at all, but I knew I wanted to work in tech, and I've been following startups since I was like 18 on what startups did what and who was where. And there's a company in Northeast, Sports Engine, that deals with sports and tech. So I leveraged my sports background to get into Sports Engine in a more support role, and found out a lot of their products not built very well. Coming from that support side, I was like, this is crap. So I started doing more and more self-teaching, trying to leverage like, how can I get into fixing all this crap without like, going back to school. And so after going to the Iron Yard, so now I do a lot of freelance stuff, and I also work as a project manager, which not development, but we'll take it. And there's something to be said about going to a place to learn, even if maybe you don't have the funds right away. There are programs out there for that, and to have structure. Self-teaching, the reason I stopped self-teaching myself was because I had hit this wall with JavaScript that I just could not break through. And going in, doing all the HTML, CSS like the week 1, and then Jim's like, okay, whatever, buy HTML. And then hitting JavaScript and having somebody there for you like at 4 a.m. when you should be sleeping and your instructor should be sleeping, but they're looking at your code and telling you, oh, you just like missed the parentheses, and you're just like, shoot me. So there's something said to have that support system and having classmates going through the same thing that you are, even if they don't want to do the same thing that you want to do. I just want to build stuff and build stuff that works and that looks nice. And some of my classmates, they just wanted to design stuff, but they wanted to understand code, so that's why they went to the Iron Yard. So there's something to be said for that, because I know a lot of people that I've talked to aren't really fans of boot camps, but you have to hear both sides of it. So.
Thank you, Janessa. So Janessa, just again, shout out to the other sessions that are happening. Janessa's got a session at 2, right? 2 and 11:15. She's got a session at 11:15 too.